you and the team took a significant risk, right, in marketing strategy, and it paid off.
Being different is better than being better as a strategy.
I love the idea of zagging when others zig. And I think it's a bold strategy that Gong zigs when others zag.
And why that is if you're trying to win a game by being better than everyone else, that is really, really hard to do. If you know anyone who's ever remotely made it to the Olympic team cut, you know that it's really, really hard. Like, these are very few humans in the world to make it. You've got to be like 100 times better than the average human being at doing what you're doing. That's really, really hard. I don't think I'm that good at anything. And so I found it a hack, or an easier way of winning is by being different. Like, if you're the only one doing something, you're kind of the winner in your category by definition. But that is the point.
Welcome to Marketing Trends. Today, I'm getting right into it because we have a phenomenal guest joining us. I'm pretty sure this human's middle name is Growth, but I want to introduce briefly Udi Ledergor. He's a 5-time marketing leader. I mean, we're talking Gong, we're talking advisor at a ton of companies. I don't know how he does it all, but Udi's journey from being the first marketer to the chief marketing officer at Gong, now the chief evangelist at Gong, is nothing short of extraordinary, is the word I'd like to use. So I'm going to shut up and just, Udi, welcome you to the show. It's so awesome to have you.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy. This is a great opportunity, and I'm looking forward to discussing today.
Indeed. I mean, I had a lot of fun in the prep, kind of looking at the content that you've put out there, but your opinions on marketing and AI. I mean, you have a lot of thought leadership in the space. You have strong opinions on things. You speak very loudly on certain things, and also I look at the results you've generated, Udi, which is like, okay, the results speak for themselves. I'm paying attention to what this man's saying. One piece I'm curious about, let's get right into this AI and content. Everybody's talking about AI and creative marketing content and push a button, spit out the easiest content you ever saw. It's high converting. It's all the things. What are you finding in that space around using AI for creative content?
So I'll start with where I think people get it wrong, and then we can cover some of the great stuff that people are using it for. I see a lot of marketers looking at AI as this godsend that's going to allow them create all this fantastic content. Great. I had this problem of scaling content before, and the problem just went away. I can hit a prompt, and ChatGPT is going to create thousands of content pages for me. Here's the spoiler alert. That is trash content. Nobody wants to read that content. And it reminds me of 15 years ago, people discovered you could offshore your content initiatives and have someone in some foreign countries spend an hour and for $50 spew out as many blog posts that you want. Nobody wants to read those blog posts, and today's AI-driven blog posts are no better than those. And here's why. I'll tell you why, Jeremy. I talk a lot about what makes great content, but the two specific things that make great content that AI does not do well yet is one, I'll start from the softer one, is on the style. So great content has some point of view and has a tone of voice that's specific. You might either want to sound serious like a bank, or you want to sound cheeky like a startup, but you have a tone of voice, you have a style that you use, and AI is not great at all at emulating those styles. Have you ever tried using the new tools like, make me sound more Gen Z? It sounds like a caricature of someone doing a bad impression of Gen Z. It does not sound like we would talk. And so that's my first problem with the AI generated content. But the bigger problem is it does not have a strong opinion. It does not have a courageous take on the topic that you're asking it to write about because of the way it was built. It's by design. It's not a bug, it's a feature. ChatGPT and all the other similar engines, they were built on training themselves on all the materials out there and then spewing out a smart autocomplete based on what's already been written. And the greatest content that you read and get excited about is not that. The greatest content that you read is a new, bold, courageous, controversial, polarizing point of view that ChatGPT cannot create because it hasn't been written yet. And if I look at all the greatest pieces of content that my brands have put out and other brands have put out, they were first or early to state that opinion, and they did it in a very bold, unapologetic way. Whereas all the content that you read from Gen AI tends to be middle of the way because that's literally what it is. It's stitching together agreeable things that have been published millions of times before. And if everyone agrees with your content, nobody's truly getting excited about it.
Do you think we're getting there? I mean, I know that there's AI can generate content quickly. We understand that, but as you said, it's not always tailored to the specific needs and the preferences of the target audience, and it can come across generic and impersonal, and like you said, kind of a caricature sometimes. So, how soon will we get there? Right? Will we get to the place where it won't lack personalization, right, and it won't ignore quality control on these things?
Right. So I think there's a few things that you can already use AI well for today, and there's things that are coming up. So let me start with maybe, because I don't want to be negative Nancy, that there's definitely things that AI can do really, really well for you today. So one is, let's say you have a piece of content that you wrote that has a strong opinion and a good tone of voice, and now you need to repurpose it and say, now I need a Twitter version of this, and I need a LinkedIn post version of this, and I want to make a short script for a podcast or something else, or create a slide deck out of it. AI does a pretty good job of repurposing and reformatting content, because that's low value work. That's just kind of grunt work, right? Taking a 300 piece article and keeping the essence of it in a 144 word piece. AI can do that pretty well. So repurposing is fantastic. Nobody should be spending time just rewording and making a shorter version, a longer version, and a spiffier version. So that's one great use of AI. Two, if you need to combine several data sources, for example, salespeople, think of this is a little bit outside of marketing, but it's a good example. An AE or an SDR who needs to send a cold call message to someone, cold email, and they want to put together some information from their last financial report and some information from their LinkedIn profile and some information about a previous interaction that might have had. AI can do that really well today. And you have products like Gong, first shameless plug, that do that for the salespeople. So those are really, really good use cases for AI today. I think AI is moving fast on emulating a specific tone of voice. So I can probably already train AI to read 100 pieces of content that I've written and get the vibe of how I write, what kind of words I use more often, what words I would use less often, what length my sentences are, and then emulate that pretty well. So that's the good news. I don't see us getting there as soon with coming up with that original point of view that I talked about. Because again, all the great pieces of content that we did at Gong, they came from someone having a bright idea, then sending someone down a rabbit hole to go research. Like, do we have data on, is it good or bad for salespeople to apologize? So if you ask ChatGPT, you're going to get this generic response. Well, here are some pros of that. Here are some cons of that. Great. So it's so trivial that I have to agree with it. But once you actually look at the data, you actually see that there are very specific cases that you want to do that. And there's most other cases where you never want to do that. I'll give you one more example. We ran a piece a few years ago that we looked at the impact of salespeople swearing on their sales calls, which was like a very weird thought. Why would you want to even suggest that salespeople use that sort of language on sales calls? We found that salespeople who use swear words like the S word or the F-bomb as a mirroring technique of their buyer's language have 8% higher win rates. Who doesn't want 8% higher win rates? And that was an original thought that we found a lot of validation for, and we created a great content piece on it that then got like completely exploded, went viral on radio stations, and fastcompany.com ran with it. We got a ton of earned media, and we had a lot of people having a visceral reaction to it. So I'd say about 2/3 or 3/4 of them were using all their colorful vocabulary to show their support. And this is the shit I've been talking about. And, this is the real shit, and so on. And then we had the other group, which was appalled that we would suggest using this type of language in a professional setting. And they were also very vocal. And that is a marketer's dream, because we created something that had a really strong opinion that had not been voiced to that extent before. And it pulled everyone out of the woodwork to create a real debate, because it was controversial, it was counterintuitive, it was really polarizing. And I haven't seen Gen AI content do that.
I am also really curious about utility when it comes to, Gen AI in the C-suite, right? Like how you are interested or actively using it in your day-to-day, right? If at all, right? I was talking to the CMO for Cisco earlier this week, and she had some interesting things to share how she was using it for meeting prep and different things that she's using kind of in her day-to-day, like, this is what I do as a CMO. But I've asked a lot of other CMOs that are still kind of testing and at the table, but not really moving as fast as others. It's been really interesting, especially in the Fortune 500, where I think that they're definitely going to be way ahead, and they're not even moving that fast, right? But in terms of just utility in your type of role, someone with your background, how are you using it? How is it helping you now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say the number one AI use case for executives at Gong and in many of the companies that I help, because in the last month, I've met with over 60 marketing teams that use Gong and wanted to use it in a deeper way. And I've shown them several executive use cases that are not for the sales reps, they're actually for the executives, the CMO, the CRO, the CEO. And I'd say the number one that floors them every time is, you know how marketers, we love doing A/B testing on things like which email subject line is going to get them to open the email, or which tagline on the ad is going to get them to click. Well, until recently, people thought that you couldn't do that to an entire sales pitch. If you roll out a new sales deck and you want to see how it's landing with customers and how is it really impacting business, is deck A better than deck B? People didn't think that was possible, but it is now with the power of AI. So in a 30-second nutshell, the way we do this with Gong is Gong captures every salesperson's conversation, whether it's on a Zoom or Google Meet call or whatever they're doing to talk to customers. We capture what they're doing, and then we look at how that affects business metrics like their win rates, their deal size, their deal velocity, and other important business metrics. And that is essentially the same thing the marketers are doing with A/B testing their emails and ads. Executives can now do that to see if the company messaging is landing. And if the new version, the product marketing and enablement we're working on for the last 3 months, is it actually better or worse than the last one? Show me a marketer who can answer that question without going through the process and using the technology that I just described. And they're like, I don't know. We roll this out at sales kickoff. Everyone applauds and go their separate ways. And then 3 months later, I'll meet an AE and I'll ask her, how's it going with the new deck? And she'll say, oh yeah, it looks great. I've been meaning to give it a try. And that's pretty much all the feedback that they get. They have no idea who's using it, how it's landing with customers, and is it really better or worse for business? Are they driving the business outcomes that they were tasked to drive forward? So that, I think, is one of the top use cases that it's just magical to see how AI does this and can tell you, well, you know, Sarah, she's using the new deck, she and her team, and that's driving their deal sizes to be 30% larger. Their deal velocity is 12% shorter, and their win rates are 58% higher versus John's team, who's not using the deck, and all of his metrics are worse than Sarah's team. So that just gives you this visibility that is really a jaw-dropping moment for most executives when they see that for the first time.
Why do you think so many execs are kind of a bit slow to running down the road with this, right? Like, I mean, there's, again, like, I'm not going to name names and brands, but we've had a ton of them on this show, and they're brilliant in their own way. But I'm surprised still that, you know, unlike you, they just aren't willing to go there as quickly and aren't moving as quick. And I'm like, man, this is wild to me. I would think you have entire teams dedicated to moving quickly. And some of these executives just aren't going there, and they seem to be moving a real slow. And I'm just curious what you think, why you think that is.
I think there's a couple of reasons. One of them is a wrong focus, not because anyone got bad intentions. I think it's just the this is the way it's always been done syndrome. So people are obsessed with measuring everything that they do for brand awareness and demand generation, sometimes to a fault, because I think that when you're obsessed about measuring things that some of them are inherently difficult to measure and don't lend themselves to be measured well, then you don't do things that are good for the business because you're afraid of not being able to measure them and then show the results. So I think that's a mistake. And at the same time, things like messaging, which usually the product marketing teams are tasked with, people just assumed that because for decades we couldn't really measure what they were doing, that's still the case, but it's not. And so they're putting that effort, they're misplacing the effort in trying to measure things that should not be measured, or measuring them in the wrong way for, say, brand awareness and demand gen, and completely neglecting the measurement on the product marketing and messaging side, which can be measured today. And then I think the second reason is that there's still this fear of, oh, if I let AI in through the door, it's going to replace me soon. And someone will say, oh, AI can do my job. In some jobs, that is going to be true. I think more often than not, especially in complex jobs like sales and marketing, my school of thought, which the one I didn't make it up, I just subscribe to it, is that the reps and the marketers using AI will replace the reps and the marketing who are not using AI.
Agreed.
And it's not that AI is going to replace us. It's that the ones who learn how to harness AI to make them better, more productive, faster at their work, more prescriptive at showing results, those are the marketers that are going to get the next promotion. And the ones that are still like, well, the attribution model doesn't show us what this is doing, and I have no idea how to measure what the impact of our new sales deck is, so we'll just roll out a new one every 6 months and hope that it's better than the last one. Those ones are not going to get the promotion, and they might be out of a job at some point.
Yeah, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly with all of that. And we shall see as the ride continues. I really liked a LinkedIn post you actually posted today. You're very active online, so everyone follow Udi because he's dropping bombs all kinds of places. But you had a post today, Udi. I want to double click into some of this because it's well known that between 2016 and 2023, you helped grow Gong from 0 to 9 figures in ARR as their first CMO. And you talked about some really interesting things in your kind of 6-step marketing playbook. I want to touch on these because I think these are invaluable and relevant today. You talked about stewardship versus ownership. And this concept really resonates with me, Udi, because it shifts the focus from a single leader to this entire team, right? Fostering this sense of, I guess, shared responsibility and collaboration. Can you elaborate on the distinction and how it influenced your strategy at Gong?
Yeah, I'll give you a simple example that I think kind of tells the whole story. So the easiest way to fail with a brand launch is making it a marketing project. You take this hapless CMO and you tell her, look, this is your project. We need a new brand. Customers don't know about us, and we want to stand for, let's say, creating raving fans. Customers love us. And so the CMO goes and works with some expensive agency, and they put out these nice billboards and website about how they make happiness and spread happiness, and everyone's wonderful. And then your customers who see that, they reflect on their experience with your brand, and they remember that they asked for a demo and it took the SDR 8 days to get back to them because they were busy doing other stuff. And then if they're already using your product, they had a technical problem and they reached out to support, and it took them a week to get back to them. And even then they didn't solve the problem. Or a candidate who wanted to actually work for you because she thought she liked the values that you reflected in your advertising. She had a terrible experience in the recruiting journey, and the recruiting coordinator didn't get back to her. And finally she was ghosted after 2 interviews. And I'm making some of this up, but none of it is really made up. I'm just creating a composite character for my story because I've seen all these things happen across.
Exactly.
And you're providing all these experiences that are contrary to what you're trying to create in your brand, and it just doesn't stick. It doesn't stick, and you start getting bad reviews on Glassdoor from candidates and employees who point out this discrepancy between your values that you're putting out in your advertising and marketing, and you're not really living them. And then customers are writing bad reviews on G2 because they're experiencing these problems as well. And then you go like, well, we must fire the CMO because she did a really terrible job with the brand building. Let's go get a new one and have her get it right. And that's the problem that I talk about. So that's the bad way of doing it, which I'm afraid is all too common. The right way of doing it is for the entire executive team to sit down with the CEO leading this and brainstorming on who are we as a brand. Not what do we want to look like on an HR poster in the kitchen, but who are we really? And let's say that we are a company who creates raving fans. Well, let's make that an operating principle that the whole company runs by. We interview for that quality. We recognize and award the employees who exhibit that behavior most, so they know that this is the behavior that we expect of them. And that's going to be criteria for their promotion and for their future hires. And we make that as basic as the plumbing in everything that we do. And now when that's a reality, we can ask marketing, and only then can we ask marketing, go and amplify that and make that part of our external brand as well. So people know that here at our company, we create raving fans, and they're going to get a great experience from the recruiting coordinator and from tech support and from sales and marketing and CSM and everyone else that they ever have a touch point with. And that's the beginning of creating a great brand.
Wow. You talked about interviewing for that quality. I love that. Can you talk about how you do that? And I think that's phenomenal. And now you talk about building a team, building the culture, like from the outside in. How do you interview for that quality?
Yeah. So one of the common questions that I use for any role that's customer facing is like, tell me, and this could be, the classical cases like a technical support or CSM, but really it goes for sales and different roles in marketing and even product engineers who interact with customers. Like, tell me about a situation that started with a pissed off customer and you managed to end with a raving fan. Like, walk me through the steps. What was the problem that you were facing? What were the alternatives you considered? What steps did you take? And how did you confirm that the customer became a raving fan? And if they can't walk you through one story like that, then it's probably not a candidate who's done this before. But if they have a few stories to choose from and you can see that they proactively took action to drive that customer from a detractor to a promoter or raving fan, then you might be onto someone who can help you on that mission.
I love that. And I've always believed that the best brand advocates come from, within the company, and hearing that create raving fans, which was another one of your points that you made. Can you share a successful initiative where you had kind of cross-departmental collaboration and it boosted, this brand engagement, it boosted this raving fan experience?
We have so many of them. Gosh. So here's just one initiative that we love. For a few years now, we've been doing this customer award program. And, there's hundreds of them out there. Many companies do them, but most of them don't really make an impact. They either don't get nominations or the nominations are few. And then when you actually give out the awards, nobody cares about them. Nobody gets excited about them. At Gong, a few years ago, we rolled out the Golden Gong Awards, which we give a handful of companies every year for like making really breakthrough uses of our AI in their revenue excellence. And because our employees are excited about this, when we start the nomination process, you see a lot of Gong employees amplify the competition out there. So it looks like a LinkedIn hijack day when everyone's talking about this. And because our customers love our brand, because they've been getting so much value out of us and they want to be associated with us, we get dozens, if not hundreds of nominations from customers who want to win the Golden Gong Awards because they know that's going to have a positive impact on them. When we finally pick our half a dozen winners, we give each of them a lot of attention and we see them and their entire teams amplifying that they won this award. So we know that it's meaningful to them. We're not paying them to do that. They don't have to do that. I've been nominated on so many fake lists that I never amplified because I knew they were fake and I was not helping myself or my reputation at all by doing this. But you see these customers who've put in the work to nominate themselves. And then when they win it, they are so grateful and they want to show the world, hey, look, Gong recognized me for being an innovative revenue leader. And of course, we make it all about them and not about Gong and the product, but we also benefit from them winning one of our awards. But I think that's an example of a good play that you can't do with a company who has a bad reputation, who doesn't treat their employees well. So the employees are not going to play along and they're not going to want to amplify these customer messages and let the company sort of take over their LinkedIn profiles, especially if they don't believe in the company values. And the customers of a mediocre brand are not going to get excited about nominating themselves. And even if an award is forced upon them, which is, I've also seen that happen when, nobody applies for a competition. So you just randomly pick some winners in hopes that at least they'll amplify that they've won this, but they won't even do that either. Because I don't remember applying for this. I don't even like your product, or, I use it because my manager makes me. So you've got to create that whole thread, and it's hard to do. It's really hard to do, like creating raving fans internally, creating raving fans externally, and reaching that situation where everyone's excited to be part of this.
Yeah, and something that you and the Gong squad have done really well. You also talk about this is humanizing the brand, right? Like this idea of making your brand feel like a person. It's incredibly powerful. Talk about how Gong made this transition and the kind of reactions you're receiving. Because I first heard about Gong, I think when I first started hosting this, and I was like, Gong, who are they? And even when I first checked out the brand, I'm like, this is different. Like, what are they doing? There's a palpable buzz around this brand that feels different. The interaction is different. The content's different. So clearly you had a lot of really magic in humanizing the brand. Would love your insight and kind of how you did that.
So it really started back in probably 2017 or so, when we started this exercise and wanted to deliberately create a brand personality. And then from that personality, which I'll talk about in a minute, we created the visual identity of the colors and the logo and the mascot and the characters. And from that came the tone of voice that we use in our content, in our social media, in our emails, in our events. But it all boils down to the personality. And I think that's a step that many brands just skip and say, oh, let's create cool content like Gong, or let's do something like someone else. But it's like trying to put someone's skin on your body, and it's not a good fit. It's got to be a good fit. You can say you want to sound like, I don't know, a Marvel picture, but if you're not those cool characters, if you're acting like a bank, that's going to look really weird when you put on that Spidey mask, right? Starting with who you are as a personality is really important. And I just recently undug some of the exercise that we did back then. And it's fascinating to see the consistency in which we've kept those brand traits. So I'll give you personality traits. So I'll give you an example. There were several levers that we pulled, and we had to decide like which extreme are we on, or where are we not on an extreme. And I think two of the interesting ones that we married together that are atypical, and I think are at the core of what makes our brand unique, is if you ask any company, like what do they want to be known for? So you'll usually hear a version of, I want to be trustworthy, or the thought leader, or the top authority in my space, right? Everyone wants that. And it just makes sense. But then they take that and try to manifest that, and they end up sounding like a bank, right? They think that to sound authoritative and leader-like, they have to be boring and stuffy, because that's what big banks and analyst firms and other large companies sound like. But we said, no, we want to be trustworthy and authoritative, but we also at the same time want to be seen as approachable and casual and informal. And to add a third one is kind of maverick. So having this unique, novel way of looking at maybe old problems and old issues, and coming with that unique perspective, and adding onto that very informal, casual, friendly, conversational tone of voice, and using all of that to still become the number one authority and thought leader. And I haven't really seen that done well before. And I think we pulled it off pretty well, because everyone goes back to our content, and when they want to know, like, what is the impact of swearing on sales calls, or what are the best and worst cold call openers, or what's the best way of engaging customers, they go back to Gong content. And people ask me about paying to license Gong content, which we give away for free, to be clear, because it's really valuable content, and the millions of downloads that we've had of our content shows that people perceive us as the thought leader that we want it to be. And at the same time, we have this unmistakable, very conversational, very approachable tone of voice that came to be both in our visual identity. When it came time to choose colors, we avoided, we looked at dozens of B2B websites of companies like ours, and they were all these blues and grays and whites that are just so bland and boring that we wanted to stay away from that. So we went for bright purple and fuchsia pink, and we chose the mascot of this crazy drooling bulldog, and it worked so well. But that bulldog spoke words of wisdom, because we're still the authority figure. But it doesn't have to come from a stuffy guy in a suit. It can come from a crazy bulldog, and that hadn't really been done before.
And it's something, it's connected to this very real authenticity, right, in Gong's marketing. Like, it's authenticity is something I find that every brand is striving for at some level, but many of them struggle with it, especially the larger orgs. And so That's a cool example to hear that Gong continues to inspire, it's the people that engage with the content. And you challenge marketers to create content worth paying for. Like, you
Yes.
do that. Speaking to the, Fortune 500 CMOs that tune into the show, how do they ensure that their content is meeting that high standard, especially today?
So I suggest kind of a two-rung ladder to think about the quality bar for your content. The first rung is, would I consume this content if I didn't have to? Like, if I didn't work for this company, would I be interested in reading this content? And that test alone is enough to disqualify probably 95% of content that's created out there and for some sad reason is still put out there for the rest of us to endure. Like, if you ask a marketer, would you really want to read this content that you're putting out today? They'd look at you like, well, probably not so much, but I've got a quota. I had to put 4 blog posts out this week. So here's my blog posts. But yeah, are they exciting? No. Then why the heck are you putting them out there? Because they're measured on quota and not quality of content. And so that's the first rung. The second rung is, would someone pay for your content? Now, a knee-jerk reaction from many people is like, who's going to pay for content? Well, do you have a subscription to Netflix or Disney Plus or Hulu or Amazon Prime or you name it, the New York Times, Masterclass, Spotify, YouTube Premium? I could go on, but every person I talk to is subscribed to at least 3 of these services, if not 10. So we all pay for content and we acknowledge that quality content is worth paying for. Okay, now that we agree on that, ask yourself, would anyone want to pay for the content you're producing? Now, if you scoff at yourself, then you've kind of answered your question. No, it's really that bad. Like, why would anyone want to pay for that? We found repeating evidence of people willing to pay for Gong's content, even though we're not a content business, we're a software business, so we don't charge for our content. But you see this when people, pay to come to our events to hear us talk about our content. And one of the highlights at every Gong event is the Gong Labs update. People are just waiting to hear what's the latest coming out of Gong Labs. 2, I've saved the emails I've gotten from university college professors that read our content and reached out to ask what it would cost them to teach that in their classes at colleges. Taking content marketing from a B2B company, that is a very humbling email to receive when a college professor wants to teach that in their sales course. And we always reply immediately with a friendly, go ahead and use this. Just make sure you credit Gong. That's all we ask. This is free for you to use. And then another example might be a sales enablement leader who writes me and says, hey, I came across this amazing content from Gong. I would love to use this for all my onboarding and training classes. What would it cost me to license this? And I'll give it to her for free as well. Just ask for a credit to Gong. And those are the proof points that you've created something so valuable that people want to pay for.
I love the idea of zagging when others zig. And I think it's a bold strategy that Gong has. If anyone just pays attention to Gong or even looks in the past, few years, like, this is a brand that zigs when others zag, and they zag when others zig in many ways. And I think our audience will be eager to hear maybe some examples there of when you and the team took a significant risk, right, in marketing strategy and it paid off, right? What's an example of that?
First, maybe I'll explain the philosophy behind that. And another way of putting when they zig, you zag, being different is better than being better as a strategy. And why that is if you're trying to win a game by being better than everyone else, the Olympic Games are opening tomorrow. That's kind of the type of game there. People are trying to win by being better. That is really, really hard to do. If you know anyone who's ever remotely made it to the Olympic team cut, you know that it's really, really hard. Like, these are very few humans in the world to make it. And you've got to be like 100 times better than the average human being at doing what you're doing. That's really, really hard. I don't think I'm that good at anything. And so I found it a hack or an easier way of winning is by being different. Like, if you're the only one doing something, you're kind of the winner in your category by definition. My CEO, he used to run triathlons at a point in time, and he used to joke that he came in second place in his age group. There were only 3 people who ran in his age group, and he came in second place. So he did very well. But that's a classic being different, not better. He was lucky to be in that age group that there were not many runners in that year. But that is the point. If you try and say, oh, look at what everyone's doing, let's do that because it seems to be working, you're probably going to be a very pale shadow of what they're doing. And at best, you might be perceived as on par, but to really rise above that is going to be really, really hard. So we already talked about it a little in our visual identity. When everyone was trying to look serious and authoritative by being blue and white and gray, we went pink and purple. Mm-hmm. When everyone had this, suited up avatar in their chatbot, we put a drooling bulldog. You'd be surprised at the click rate and response rate when all we needed to do is have that bulldog ask the sort of prompting question, who's a good boy? You know how many people clicked on that to answer him? Like, who could resist him? Who could resist a good boy? So those are the type of things that we do to stand out. And again, when we talk about our content efforts, so instead of doing the classic things, which we still do some of with our take on like what's the best way to start a cold call and that sort of thing, but looking at things that people hadn't looked at before, like what's the impact of swearing on a conversation, or doing events in unique places and venues that people really want to come to, and not taking a cheap restaurant that is just convenient for your budget and you're hoping that people are going to come because they owe you something. No, let's like really make a stretch. And, when people are in town for Dreamforce, we've been doing it for a few years now. We closed one of San Francisco's top-rated Michelin-starred restaurants. I forget if they have 2 or 3 stars, but they have several of them. And people fight over a spot at that dinner because everyone else is taking the cheap bars in the financial district, but we've got the fancy Michelin restaurant, which is absolutely worth every penny that we spend in it. And talking about, before about measuring ROI and people measuring the wrong things, we measure the ROI on these events. And we see that for every dollar that we spend for that caviar and champagne, we see 10 times more dollars come in business and pipeline created because we get the absolute best buyers in there. We give them the best experience. And you betcha that the next day when the AE picks up the phone, they will answer. So measure the right things, give a different experience. People will come. People will play along.
Many people know this about you, that you carry a large tool belt around with lots of tools that are very valuable, in the world of marketing and sales. And there's one tool I'd be remiss to not talk on before we wrap up here. And this is the tool around the two-headed dragon, right? This age-old conversation. I have it with many executives, and it's always a very interesting dialogue with alignment between sales and marketing. And you describe it as the two-headed dragon, which I'm totally stealing. I love that analogy. And you know intimately about this synergy and how important it is. It can make or break a company's growth. Yep. If I'm sitting at a table with someone talking about this topic, I'm listening to what you're saying. Talk about sales and marketing alignment, riff on it for us. Tell us, what's working, what's not. How have you done it so well?
I've seen this collapse and implode in too many companies, including companies I worked for, where there was this distrust between sales and marketing. And you can understand where it comes from, right? You ask a typical salesperson, marketing, they just put a fishbowl at the booth. They collect all these leads. They dump them over our cubicle wall and say, good luck following up. And all these are trash. So I'm not going to do anything. And then marketing say, well, we put all this work in, we brought back all these leads, but those damn salespeople, they don't know how to follow up. They won't talk to our leads. And that creates a chasm between those teams. And that distrust turns into ignoring each other. And then marketing is sitting in their little silo, creating all these marketing campaigns and materials, and then sitting waiting for sales to follow up. But sales don't understand how that is helping them. And sales will not do anything that is not helping them close another deal. And marketing fails to realize what motivates salespeople. And so all those reasons create a lack of trust and siloed work and very ineffective go-to-market. So at Gong, we did things differently, and at other companies I worked for as well. So first, I defined the goal of my team as to make sales easier. And I did not teach that only to salespeople who joined, to marketing people who joined my team, but I also said that to every salesperson who joined, and I gave my onboarding session, like, hi, I'm in marketing. Our goal is to make sales easier, and let me show you how we do that. And so first they understand that we're aligned to their success. Now they're listening, right? Because sales will listen to anyone who's going to help them close the deal. So I'm not here to show them, oh, look at the great likes we got on our social posts. They couldn't care a rat's ass about that. hey, let me show you how I'm bringing you qualified opportunities and where you can help me help you with that. So that first, aligning on the goal. Two, there's operating principles of how to align sales and marketing. I came up or played along with 5 that I can run through them quickly if you think that's valuable. So
Yes.
number 1 is ensuring that both team leaders share the common KPIs and all the way to their compensation. So the last thing that sales want to see is marketing claiming victory on something that sales don't see as a victory. Marketing cannot be crushing it and be at 150% of their quota if sales are not. And by aligning KPIs, and we probably don't have time today to get into the mechanics of that, but by doing that well, the teams know that we're aligned. And marketing can only crush it if sales is crushing it, and marketing can only celebrate if sales is celebrating. That's number 1. Number 2, it's related to that, but it's tactical but very important, and that is the currency of what does sales expect marketing to give them. And it sounds trivial, but I still see companies compensating marketing on MQLs. My beloved VP marketing, Jameson Young, used to say, "Oh, you brought us MQLs. That's adorable." And that's seriously how salespeople feel about MQLs. Like, what the is an MQL? I sent to an MQL. What is that? It's completely made up by marketing, and I never use that term outside of a marketing meeting. It's an internal leading indicator that marketing can use for good uses, but nobody else in the world cares about it. I've seen SDR teams compensated on meetings scheduled, but that's the wrong metric too, because that's going to bring a lot of junk meetings that cannot be sold to, but people will do what they're incentivized to do. And so if you're incentivizing SDR or marketing to just bring meetings, and they're not held accountable for the meetings actually showing up, you're going to lose 35% of those to no-shows. Another 35% are going to be unqualified by the end of the meeting. But guess what? Marketing and SDR still get their bonuses because they brought the meeting. So that's not the right metric. I could list 10 others that are bad ones. The best one that we found is something that sales understands and appreciates, which is a sales qualified opportunity. Anything above that in the funnel, sales just don't understand. Like, is this going to become business or not? I have no idea. But if sales has met with someone, that means that marketing and SDR had to make sure that person actually shows up to a meeting. That's the first condition to be met. And that at the end of the call, sales said, yes, this person met all of our buying criteria, whether it's BANT or other, every organization has their criteria. They met all of our criteria. I see real business with this account. I want to pursue this business. That is a sales qualified opportunity. That is good currency for marketing, SDR, and sales to share. So that currency is super important and can make and break that whole relationship. Moving along quickly, number 3 is a unified set of reports and dashboards. So we don't have different versions of numbers. And when someone says pipeline, we all mean the same thing. When someone says opportunities, we all mean the same thing. Number 4 is integrating the teams. This is on the softer side, integrating the teams in their daily habits. There's a test that I developed for the leadership level, but it applies to all other levels in the team. If I, as CMO, don't know how my CRO takes her coffee, I'm not doing this right. If I can't go on a coffee run, coming back with a coffee that I know it's exactly the way my CRO takes it, I'm not doing my job right. It means I'm not aligning and meeting with them often enough to know that. And your demand gen manager and your SDR leaders and your sales teams managers and ABM program managers should all know how their peers in the other team takes their coffee, because that would mean that they're meeting often enough to align on all the challenges and the joint solutions to those challenges. So that's the coffee test, which I really recommend. It's
great.
An eye-opener
Yeah.
for many people. And the 5th and last one that I would mention for sales marketing alignment is internal marketing. Investing in internal marketing so that everyone, especially in sales, understands how marketing is contributing to their success. Many times marketing is doing a good job, but doesn't present it well enough, doesn't amplify that message, and then people don't know what they're doing. And that lack of knowledge leads to more distrust and leads to less cooperation. So when, I'll end with an example, when I asked the entire sales team to amplify a marketing message, I'm not asking them to do me a favor. I'm showing them that by doing this, the LinkedIn algorithm is going to favor this story that we just published, and that in turn is going to be shown to more of their prospects. And this is how I bring those prospects as qualified sales opportunities to their desk. So by them taking 30 seconds to share that post, they're helping me create more sales opportunities for them.
I mean, a short mini masterclass on, sales and marketing alignment. There's so much meat and gold there. And again, I mean, I think Gong is writing the playbook there in terms of alignment. It's incredible. We've got a little bit of time left. I've got 100 more questions, Udi, and I knew this was going to happen. I'm like, I need more time with this gentleman. But I am curious about ABM and the world of ABM, and specifically, in a lot of these kind of larger B2B brands that we interact with and interface with are also forming their own ABM strategies and things, but specifically around connecting with executive level, C-suite level folks at these brands that we want to engage with, they want to engage with, and they want to connect with. Like, what's working well with executive level initiatives? We know we want to get to the C-suite, or we know they want to get to the C-suite. What works well in terms of ABM, generally speaking, in your experience?
The two tips I can share here for those high-level executives is one, again, not shocking, but hyper-personalization. That means that every touch point that those execs see with our brand has to be hyper-personalized. So if let's say I'm going after Acme's CRO, the ad that Acme's CRO will see on their LinkedIn or through a Google display network is going to be like, here's how Acme can improve their whatever important metric with Gong. And here's how, as a CRO, you can stand out. I'll make sure that it's tailored to the brand and to the persona and to the deal stage that they're in, so that hyper-personalization makes me stand out, because 99% of brands are not going to make that effort. And just by showing up, I can get their attention. So that's number one. And number two is going the extra mile with how and where I present myself. So, everyone's doing LinkedIn ads, everyone's doing Google ads. They are still effective when done right and with the right effort, but not everyone is sending a personalized gift that shows up at that person's desk. I remember during COVID when we were all working at home with our children, we found out that an effective gift was sending something for our prospects' children to keep them busy. So we'd send like a coloring book and crayons. And now that your child is busy, can we have that call that I've been trying to schedule? And once someone got that gift for their children and they found it thoughtful, they were more inclined to set aside the time to talk with us. So those types of ideas of showing up differently, again, goes back to different is better than better that I keep saying, because I'll give you one last example. We had this ongoing campaign that saw a lot of success. We called it Operation Piñata. And we sent these ridiculously extra large piñatas that came in a box with the piñata's legs all sticking out of the box. And like every single person who got that responded like with roaring laughter. Okay, you've got my attention. Like, my kids loved it. What can I do to help? And so just doing something that's so batty like that is going to get people's attention.
Okay, Udi. So looking ahead, what do you see as the next major innovation or trend in the revenue intelligence space? How is Gong preparing to stay ahead of these trends and continue leading the market, as this evolution is happening?
I think it boils down to the core philosophy that we have around helping revenue teams, which is pretty much everything they do can be put in one of two buckets. One, it can be automated away with AI either today or in a short time from now. And we're relentlessly working to automate away all these low value tasks that there's no reason that you and I should be spending time on. Do we really need to update the CRM and put in notes from my call with the customer? I know some systems still make their SDRs update whether they got to voicemail or did the customer answer. Like, why are we doing this? Why are we updating our CRM manually in 2024 when AI can automate all these things away? There's hundreds of things that AI can automate away. So that's the first bucket. The second bucket is for everything else, which we are still uniquely qualified to do as human beings, we need guidance. We need prioritization. We need someone to tell me, if you do things in this sequence, you will start with the thing that will make the most impact on your day today, and then move to the second most impactful thing and the third most impactful thing. And I will update that list for you throughout the day and while you're sleeping at night. So tomorrow morning, you'll have a fresh list of what are the most impactful things you can do based on all the signals that the AI is picking up from who opened your emails and which companies just published their reports and who's having a shopping day on G2 looking for a solution like yours, picking up all these signals and telling you, the human being, what you are qualified to do and need to do in order of sequence to make the most impact. And that's what's guiding us right now. So we're adding tons of magical automations, and we're providing the smartest guidance to find the most impactful things that are going to drive the outcomes the revenue teams need. And those two things together are really, just looking at them, the sky's the limit.
Amazing. At this point, Udi, if we were in an auditorium, they'd be standing up and cheering and shouting. Thank you so much for being a part of this show, Udi. You're a legendary marketer. I was really, really curious to have this time. And I know we're all paying attention to the Gong Squad. Congratulations. I know that your story is definitely not done yet. It was really an honor to connect today. And thank you for coming on Marketing Trends.
Thanks so much, Jeremy.